Yo, what's up everybody? It's your girl, Tanya Tennant, back with another video. Now, when we think of the Maroons of Jamaica, we often picture freedom fighters, right? Escaping slavery, building their own communities, giving the finger to the British Empire, and that's all true, but like any good story, there's more to it. It's like finding out Bob Marley was secretly a tax accountant. Shocking, right? But stay with me. Today, we're going deep into the untold, the uncomfortable, the sometimes dark history of the Jamaican Maroons. Buckle up, people, because this is a wild ride. Let's kick off with a history lesson, yeah? The Maroons weren't just chilling in the mountains sipping coconut water. They fought two major wars with the British, and trust me, these weren't your typical tea and crumpets affairs. We're talking guerrilla warfare, surprise attacks, booby traps hidden in the jungle. The Maroons, they knew the land, man. They used it to their advantage.
Now the British, they weren't playing nice either. They came with their fancy European tactics. But the jungle, that's a whole different beast. The First Maroon War lasted for decades, can you imagine? Finally, they signed a treaty in 1739. Peace at last, right?
Not so fast. Fast forward a couple of decades, boom! The Second Maroon War explodes. This time the British weren't messing around. They brought in more troops, more firepower, and even bloodhounds, man. Bloodhounds. That's just cold.
This is where things get really complicated really fast. See, some Maroons, they started owning slaves themselves. I know, right? Mind-blowing. How could people who fought so hard for freedom turn around and enslave others? Well, the world ain't black and white, my friends. It's shades of morally grey.
Some Maroons, they saw it as survival. They needed labor for their communities. And in those days, sadly, enslaved Africans were the currency of the Caribbean. Others, they might have been influenced by the very system they were fighting against. It's a tough pill to swallow, but it's part of the story.
Now this chapter, this is a tough one. See, to maintain their freedom, some Maroons made deals with the devil, or in this case, the British. They became, and I can't believe I'm saying this, slave catchers. Yeah, you heard right. They would capture runaway slaves and return them to the plantations.
Now, imagine you're an enslaved African. You risk everything to escape. You see freedom on the horizon, and then bam! You get caught by the very people who you thought were fighting for your freedom. It created this massive rift, this deep resentment between the Maroons and the rest of the enslaved population.
By now you're probably thinking, Tanya, this is heavy stuff, and you'd be right. But we're not done yet. Remember that Second Maroon War? Well, it didn't end slavery in Jamaica, and the Maroons, they were still seen as a threat.
Fast forward to 1795, the Maroons of Trelawny Town, they rebelled. They were fed up with British interference, with broken promises, with the whole damn system. But here's the kicker. Not all the Maroons were on board. Some saw the rebellion as doomed from the start, and they sided with the British. Talk about a family feud.
The rebellion was brutally crushed, and the leaders deported. It's a story of internal division, of desperation, and ultimately of tragedy.
Now, you might think that after fighting for freedom, surviving wars, and dealing with the British, the Maroons would be united, right? Well, remember what your mama always said, you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family. And let me tell you, these Maroon communities, they were like families. Big, complicated, dysfunctional families. There were constant power struggles, disagreements over treaties, arguments about how to deal with the British. It was like a never-ending episode of Keeping Up with the Maroons, except instead of designer handbags, they were fighting over land rights and political control. Okay, this chapter is a wild one, folks. So, after the Second Maroon War, the British, they were done with the Maroons. They said, all right, you guys are trouble, time to go. But instead of sending them back to Africa, where many were originally from, they shipped them off to, wait for it, that Nova Scotia. Yeah, Canada. I guess nobody told the British that Canada gets cold, like really cold. Not exactly ideal for people used to the Jamaican sunshine.
And if that wasn't bad enough, they were later moved again, this time to Sierra Leone in West Africa. Talk about a long way from home.
Let's be real, folks. The British Empire, they weren't exactly known for their fair play.
They were masters of manipulation, and they used every trick in the book to maintain control.
One of their favorite tactics, divide and conquer.
They would pit different Maroon groups against each other, promising favors to one side, threatening the other.
It's like that old saying, when two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers.
And in this case, the grass was the unity and strength of the Maroon communities.
Imagine this. You've built a new life, a new culture, far away from everything you've ever known. But over time, that culture, those traditions, they start to fade. That's what happened to the Maroons. As they integrated into Jamaican society, their language, their music, their customs, they started to blend with the dominant culture. It's a story we see time and time again, the slow erosion of traditions in the face of colonialism and globalization.
Even today, centuries after the Maroon Wars, many Maroon communities still face challenges. They often live in remote areas with limited access to education, healthcare, and economic opportunities. It's a reminder that the legacy of colonialism, of exploitation, it doesn't just disappear overnight. It continues to cast a long shadow, impacting generations to come.
And finally, we come to the present day. One of the biggest issues facing Maroon communities today is the fight for land rights. See, back in the day, the British, they promised the Maroons land in exchange for peace. But those promises, they were about as reliable as a used car salesman with a toothy grin. Now, centuries later, the Maroons are still fighting to have their ancestral lands legally recognized. They're up against powerful forces, developers, logging companies, the government. But the Maroons, they've never backed down from a fight. They're resilient, they're determined, and they're fighting for what's rightfully theirs.
So there you have it, the untold, the uncomfortable, the often overlooked aspects of the Jamaican Maroons. It's a story of resilience, of resistance, but also of compromise, of difficult choices made in the face of impossible circumstances. It's a reminder that history is never black and white. It's messy, it's complicated, and it's full of surprises. The Maroons, they were fighting for their survival, and sometimes that meant making deals with the devil, even if it meant betraying their own ideals. But through it all, their spirit, their determination, it never wavered. The history of the Jamaican Maroons is complex and multifaceted, filled with both triumphs and tragedies. By understanding these darker aspects, we can gain a more complete picture of their legacy and the ongoing struggles they face today. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into history.